Hi everyone and welcome back. A couple of years ago I tried a pair of Burson Timekeeper GT3 monoblock amplifiers that made me sell my own benchmark AHB2 power amplifiers. I tried them, I love them, I still use them today, especially when I need to do some burn-in for a fresh pair of loudspeakers. But these crafty mates, they started tinkering with new technology and they released their flagship level monoblock amplifiers. So these are their Timekeeper Voyager mono amplifiers. These are more expensive for sure. If you go with the standard package, they will cost you $4,999 US. And if you go with the max package that includes two fusion core power supplies, then that will be an extra 1,000, and that's exactly what I'm going to review today. And I also decided to make a big family reunion, so I'll be using a Burson DAC, a Burson preamplifier, and these Timekeeper Voyagers, so this will be quite interesting. I have a lot of ground to cover today, so please grab yourself a snack and a drink and let's go ahead with this review. If you have already checked my soloist Voyager preamplifier and headphone amplifier review, then you basically know everything that you need to know about the build quality and the look of the Timekeeper Voyager, because they use basically the same case, the same cooling, everything is pretty much identical except for the internal components, of course, because this is a power amplifier. We no longer have a massive 120mm Noctua fan sitting on top and blowing cool air on top of its electronics. As I understand, we have a couple of fans sitting just below the PCB, but the good part is that I cannot hear them spinning anymore, so this unit is whisper quiet by comparison. The orange elements, which might appear as copper, are actually colored aluminum parts, so please don't mistake them for copper heat pipes, below and on these sides, because these are just colored aluminum parts, but they still do their job pretty nicely. Their cases are CNC machined from raw aluminum. As you can see, we have short rubber feet and a few openings just underneath the unit that will exhaust hot air outside its case, and also on the back, as you can see, the same happens. Since the Voyager gets quite hot, especially on the lateral heatsinks after more than 4 hours of use, I decided to measure the temperature with a professional Bosch thermodetector, and these are my results. While 60 degrees Celsius on the lateral heatsinks is quite hot and you won't be able to keep your fingers on it for a very long time, the majority of its internal components were built to withstand a much higher temperature, around 100 degrees Celsius, on a 24/7 basis, so there is no need for excessive concern. As power amplifiers, you won't find lots of buttons, a remote or volume controls, so we have just one single on-off button on the front panel and everything else was moved on their back. There you'll find a 4-pole DC power socket, two 12 volts triggers that will be controlling your entire setup with a single remote control, a pair of speaker terminals, and both RCA and XLR analog inputs. The orange buttons on the far right allow you to switch the gain and select either the RCA or the XLR analog input. Ever since I tried some old amplifiers a long time ago, and those were based on Hexicon lateral MOSFETs, and experiencing that organic, very lifelike, almost tube-like in nature sound, I felt in love immediately with that sound, and I started searching for amplifiers that are using these Hexicon lateral MOSFETs, and there are several newer designs like Ilium AM23R, like Live HP2A, all of those are using Hexicon lateral MOSFETs, and I started to recommend them left and right to several amp builders. And I'm very happy to tell you that finally we have a Burson amplifier with Hexicon lateral MOSFETs. I'm very happy to see them because I know exactly what to expect sound-wise from those 6 Hexicons. About a third of the internal PCB layout is actually occupied by the power supply. I see several ultra-low noise power regulators, and remember that the Fusion cores already deliver clean DC power, meaning that the power is regulated and filtered twice. The power filtering and capacitance are overkill, but that's the spirit of high-end audio designs. You can also spot their latest generation silent power modules. Those are their lowest noise floor modules ever designed. At the input buffer stage, there is just one single transistored V7 Vivid op-amp. Those were released only a few months ago, and overall this is exactly what I would expect from a pair of well-built monoblock amplifiers with ultra-short signal paths, a simplified input buffer, and a power stage that avoids hundreds of components that could compromise the purity of the signal. Burson Audio specifies 200 watts per channel in 8 ohms and 100 watts per channel in 4 ohms. However, there is one important thing to know, is that the first 30 watts are being delivered in full Class A operation, and that's what makes them quite special. Now, I know several amplifiers that can provide up to 3 watts, 5 watts, and sometimes even 10 watts per channel, but 30 watts in Class A operation, that's basically past labs territory. They will sound great, but they will pay a heavy price of being hotter compared to regular Class AB amplifiers. Last but not least, the Max package also includes a pair of Fusion cores, and these are very different power supplies because they use gallium nitride transistors to switch the power on and off, and that happens much faster and at a much higher rate compared to your regular transistors. And this ultra fast switching and ultra high frequency switching, combined with a beefy DC filtering and regulation stage, leads to a more effective noise reduction and delivers cleaner power on the spot for all the components inside the Timekeeper Voyager. With everything set up, let's focus on the most important part of this review, sound quality. And what would be a better way to test these Timekeeper Voyagers than in a full Burson Audio setup? So that's exactly what I did. I used a Conductor GT4 as a DAC, also a soloist Voyager as a pre, and these two Timekeeper Voyagers powered by those two Fusion cores. Only with the Rockna Wavedream net providing the tunes, working as a streamer. So I know the Burson Audio house sound very well. I believe I tried most, if not most, of their designs, and every single time I can feel that this is the Burson Audio house sound, sounding vivid, thumpy, punchy, dynamic, ultra fast, and very resolving. That would be, just a few words to describe the Burson Audio house sound. However, last year I felt the biggest jump, the biggest leap forward in terms of sound. That was the moment when I added that Fusion core to the Conductor GT4. The sound transformed quite a lot with the Fusion cores, bringing some refinement and a sensation of peace, of this is exactly how high-end audio should sound. It was not only technical, but also for the first time very relaxing, and I can listen to basically anything without any kind of hardness and thinness or brightness or anything like that. Really, it was quite a big difference, and even right now I can recommend to you the Max package with the Fusion cores, because the change in performance is quite substantial. And the same basically happened when I moved from the Timekeeper GT3 to the Timekeeper Voyagers, because right now I have more power on top. Yes, I have more headroom, I can feel that pretty easily, but the sound is simply of a much higher quality. Not only in terms of frequency response, just overall the sound is more refined, it's more peaceful. There is no hardness whatsoever, no thinness, just an amazing flow of the music, and I can listen to basically anything I want. And it's a joy doing it for a couple of hours. It's like I upgraded my meals from a McDonald's to a 1-star Michelin restaurant. Finally, I have so much more flavor the texture is much more complex, and overall everything is much more complete. Like, you don't want to change anything, it's just perfect. The treble in particular is no longer itchy, like it was the case on those medium level soloist X series or conductor X series. That is no longer the case. And the bass is right now much more muscular sounding. It's of a higher quality as well, because I can hear additional layers of information in the bass region. So it's not just more bass, but a higher quality bass as well. It almost becomes redundant talking about things like resolution, detail retrieval, or transparency, or dynamics, as I believe the gap between my Ultima 3 mono amplifiers and the Timekeeper Voyager has shrunk considerably, and finally I can hear much more mature sound from the house of Burson. While the treble region no longer bites and no longer clenches my teeth, the region that impressed me a lot is the mid-range region, which finally is much more emotional sounding, very similar to a tube-based amplifier. So the sound is much more emotional, it's simply flowing much nicer, there is more texture, there is more meat on the bone, the sound is heavier, and you can just enjoy everything that is happening in that region. Vocals, musical instruments, everything is just more juicy sounding, a little bit more colorful, but this part I like a lot with the new Timekeepers. With a reworked buffer stage, with a higher current delivery, and just utilizing some higher quality components, I believe that the sound has matured and the chaos has been tamed, and that made me appreciate the music much more, because all of those technicalities that always mattered to me, they vanished like shadows and dust. And the sound is unmistakably of a higher refinement, while still retaining the core values that made Burson audio famous all around the globe. Before moving on to other important matters, I cannot move forward without mentioning one important aspect: headroom and power. So with the soloist Voyager put in medium gain position, the highest volume I could reach was 60 out of 99 steps available, and mind you, the sound was already reaching some 120 dB peaks in this room, so the sound was very loud. A normal listening level for me, that would be at around 45, maybe 48 levels out of 100 available, so that would be at around 100 dB SPL. So again, there's plenty of power on top, and mind you, I'm using medium gain, not high gain. With the high gain I could reach maximum 40 out of 99 steps available, so clearly there is more than enough power on top, and mind you, those are not easy to drive and those are not easy to control. With a sensitivity of 86-87 dB per 1 watt of power, they need lots of power to be controlled, yet we have all of that in these Timekeeper Voyagers Duo. Okay guys, let's talk dynamics. On paper, these are just marginally more powerful compared to the old Timekeeper GT3, yet the sound is definitely meaner and harder pounding with every beat drop. The sound is simply more powerful, there is simply more energy roaming in this room, like an extra pair of woofers appeared on the front baffle of those speakers, and finally I have simply more oomph and a stronger bass delivery all around. I'd say that in terms of bass speed, bass attack, and overall kick in the chest, frankly, these are basically the hardest pounding amplifiers that I have experienced at my place. These are providing more energy even compared to my own pair of Chord Ultima 3 monoblock amplifiers, which mind you are considerably more expensive. Compared to the live GAN M mono amplifiers, the Soundstage is very similar, but the punch and the low end delivery and overall how much energy they bring with every beat, these are simply playing on a higher level compared to the GAN M, and compared to my former benchmark HB2 and also with the Timekeeper GT3, again, these are simply providing more oomph, more bass, more energy, and just overall a more powerful feeling when it comes to dynamics. There is simply a lot of energy going in the lowest octaves. Compared to my former amplifiers, I don't have just more oomph because, with more power you also need a nicer grip and a nicer control over your speakers. Otherwise the sound will lose control and will sound boomy all over the place. But that is not happening with these. I had a little bit of boominess with the AHB2 by Benchmark. Those were providing lots of power, but the control was not really super tight. It was good, but not amazing. But I realized that only after trying just a couple of additional amplifiers, and that felt with the GT3. And again, I feel a better control with the Voyagers. I'm not sure if that Fusion Cores power supply, bringing such a nicer tight, but I can say that definitely the Fusion Cores add a really good grip over the speaker drivers, and everything is much tighter and cleaner sounding compared to the old GT3. It goes without saying that these two are basically the kings of punchy dynamics that almost command you to start dancing, especially when nobody is watching. This duo knows how to impress a dynamic junkie like me, and I'm sure you'll feel the same once music starts doing its mojo on a pair of brand new Timekeeper Voyagers. When discussing things like sound transparency, like sound resolution, we should understand the difference between the old Timekeeper GT3 and the new Timekeeper GT4 and the Timekeeper Voyagers. We now have a newer generation of input buffers. We have the newer V7 vivid op amps, which bring a high dynamic range and also a lower distortion. We now have much lower noise floor modules. Those are silent power 02 modules, which bring a much lower noise floor. I believe 0.8 microvolts, which is crazy. I don't have them on the GT3. And overall, we have a much nicer voltage regulation, voltage filtering stage. And of course, when the noise floor is going down, it means that dynamic range and sound transparency goes up. And that's exactly what happens with the Voyagers. And let's not forget the Fusion Cores, which again bring instant power on the spot and a filtering and a cleaning up the power once again. So these are quite transparent, very clean, I'd say, sounding. They have a measured performance of 110 dB signal to noise ratio, which is, I'd say, considerably higher compared to 95 dB on the live GAN-M mono amplifiers. So subjectively speaking, I'd say that I can hear a little bit more nuance, a little bit more subtleties and things playing in the background on these compared to the GAN-M. But in high-end audio, I believe that these small things can make quite a substantial difference. And yes, they sound cleaner compared to the GAN-M, they sound cleaner compared to the HB2, I'd say, and pretty much on the same level with my Ultima 3 by Chord Electronics, which says a lot by how clean and how transparent these two are sounding. If you already experienced any Voyager from the Burson audio, like Soloist Voyager, like maybe Conductor Voyager that was released just a couple of days ago, then you know exactly what to expect from the Timekeeper Voyagers, because they sound pretty much identical when it comes to resolution transparency. And if you add that Fusion Core, then simply forget about noise floor. You cannot detect it with anything, even with your ears sitting near your tweeters, you cannot hear anything. So that's everything that I have to say about their transparency and detail retrieval. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I want to remind you that we're dealing with two mono amplifiers. Their electronics are not shared, their power supplies are not shared, meaning that we no longer have channel crosstalk distortion. That usually shrinks the scale of the music, that adds a little bit of fog, that makes the stereo separation less impressive. Such kind of distortion can be found on stereo integrated amplifiers, on stereo power amplifiers, but not in mono designs. And let me tell you a story about my experience, my hi-fi adventures. About 1.5 years ago, I bought the Chord Electronics Ultima 5 power amplifier. That was stereo power amplifier, and that one sounded so much better compared to the benchmark AHB2 Duo that I was using also. It was much more natural. The difference in naturalness was actually substantial. The sound also had more grip, more control. Even the scale was bigger, which was actually quite surprising. And about 6 months later, I tried a pair of Ultima 3 mono amplifiers, which are basically like a pair of Ultima 5 just working in mono, you know, one amplifier for your left and one for your right speaker. And when I tried those Ultima 3 mono amplifiers, I didn't get better dynamics, nicer, you know, resolution or something like that. I had basically the same technicalities. The sound was exactly as engaging, exactly as natural, but there was quite a big difference in terms of scale and overall holography and all these stereo effects, stereo separation, soundstage, everything that has to do with stereo separation, with depth, and soundstage was simply nicer, and the difference was not small at all. It was like twice as impressive in terms of scale. Like the room was 2 times bigger. I had simply more sound all around me. It was quite shocking. I never heard such a big sounding pair of amplifiers, and that, you know, made me realize how important are mono amplifiers and how impressive is this stereo separation when you have a pair of mono amplifiers. And I couldn't go back to my Ultima 5, so again I bought that pair of Ultima 3 mono amplifiers. And it's basically the same when I tried the Timekeeper 3i stereo integrated amplifier from Burson Audio, and then I moved to the Timekeeper GT3. The sound got bigger, about twice as big. But the jump from GT3 to Timekeeper Voyager was not as big, obviously. It's hard quantifying in numbers, but I'd say that it was an improvement of around 25% in terms of scale, separation, depth. Everything was a little bit nicer with the Voyagers. Every step of the way I felt that the sound was getting bigger, airier, more separated, and overall I'd say that this is the sound that I'm getting with flagship level amplifiers. It's pretty much on the same level with the Live Gun M in this regard. So those also sounding quite 3D and, you know, very layered and very separated. Everything is floating mid-air in its own bubble of air. So that's exactly what I'm getting with the Voyagers as well. Moving on to frequency response, you know, I believe there is a bass head in all of us without you knowing about this. For example, I don't consider myself to be a bass head. I like to have a really nice control in between bass, mid-range and treble, so that is very important. However, when the bass is becoming so punchy, so alive, and makes you dance and makes you smile, all while being super clean and very tight, I simply realized that yes, maybe I am a bass head. And that's exactly what I'm getting with the Timekeeper Voyagers. I'd say it right from the start that I didn't hear an amplifier that provides as much energy in the bass like this one provides. The Ultima 3 do not provide as much energy in the bass, and any other amplifier that I reviewed and tried at my place do not provide as much energy in the bass like this one does, all while keeping, you know, the basses clean, refined, and really grippy and tight. This is a skill that impressed me right from the start on the Timekeeper Voyagers, and I'm not sure if those 30 watts delivered in Class A operation has something to do with it, but I believe that's exactly why the sound is so energized and so fun and so punchy and so alive. Mine amplifiers are working in Class AB, and everything else that I tried provides up to 10 watts in Class A. But these ones are providing 30 watts, and with these loudspeakers it's like hearing the bass in its full glory. It's something else entirely. There is no way you won't fall in love with its mid-range performance. Although bass is impressive, the mid-range is what made me realize that Burson is making some changes in their tonality, and overall this is quite a different mid-range delivery compared to what I've experienced before in Burson audio designs. I find it seductive, almost feminine in nature, the mid-range I mean. Guitars, for example, are no longer shredded but weeping with emotion. Violins make you feel all soft and warm inside, and everything that was hard and aggressive or thin sounding has been replaced with an almost peaceful sensation. That's what I'm getting with the mid-range. You can call it whatever you wish, and yes, there is some sweetness in here, and yes, there is some smoothness in the mid-range as well. Those hexagons were actually made to mimic the sound of vacuum tubes. That was the main goal when developing those hexagon MOSFETs, and yes, I can hear that tonality and that liquidity oozing from the Timekeeper Voyagers. But the word that always keeps coming up is actually honesty, because I find them more honest sounding compared to anything they made before. Some people associate high resolution, high detail retrieval with sharp and overly defined trebles, but that is not how I see it. I've been there, I've done that, and I can say it right now that a super resolving sound has nothing to do with treble sharpness. I'll go as far and say that the most resolving sounding systems that I heard in my life have never pushed the trebles to sharp territory or higher than what I'm getting in real life. The purest sound doesn't need to be ultra sharp or ultra clinical. It needs to steal your attention, move you emotionally, and put some goosebumps all over your body, sounding real and not fabricated. And you know what? All of these qualities are already residing within the Timekeeper Voyagers. Wrapping up, there are two things which are stopping me from hitting these as perfect, but that has nothing to do with their sound. First of all, if you go with the max package, then you are getting 2 mono amplifiers and 2 Fusion Core power supplies, so we're looking at 4 metallic boxes. If you go with their soloist Voyager max package and also conductor Voyager max package, then you are again adding 4 metallic boxes, and the visual appeal is not so high having so many metallic boxes. I would like to have the Fusion Core somewhere inside, you know, a bigger enclosure. That will look much nicer, I believe. And also, secondly, on the lateral heatsinks, I'm getting around 60 degrees Celsius after around 4 hours of non-stop music playback, which is high but not dangerously high. However, it's higher compared to my own amplifiers, compared to other Class A or Class AB amplifiers I tried. So if you can accept these compromises, then for the first time in a Burson audio review on this channel, I cannot complain about this sound in any way, starting with dynamics, power, resolution, scale, fun factor, organic, and how natural they sound. I simply cannot complain. They tick all the boxes for me as an audiophile and also as a music lover. Thanks for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing if you found this video helpful. Also, if you want to know more about these bad boys, then please check out my written review that I left below. That contains on average about 3 to 4 times the information of this video. Keep rocking, and I'll see you very soon. Cheers!